All right, good afternoon, everyone. Mike and Corey are here today. We got three exciting topics. Apple doing airlifts, like military operations of iPhones. I'm going to cover that. Then a new,
Were
what
they
I see
behind
as,
enemy lines on that? Jeez.
actually, who knows? Who knows? But we'll see. Now, that's what we need, airlift drops to our soldiers behind enemy lines. That's what we need next. But and then another opportunity. When I read this article, I read opportunity all the way. Chat GPT and taxes. And since today is April 15th, I'm sure that's why that article shows up. And if you're down to the wire and you're using Chat GPT, good luck. You're down to, you gotta, probably at least a few more hours to get it postmarked. And then Corey's going to talk about JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon. What does he say next? What's coming next? At least as related to earnings, not necessarily just for JP Morgan Chase, but for everyone. So as we get started, this is a financial education presentation. You must do your own due diligence on anything that you hear in this presentation. More disclaimer information can be found on ankerstarwealth.com, and the opinions expressed are mine and Corey's alone. So hey, so when I read this, and I've got a kid in the Air Force that does cargo, I was like thinking, wow, Apple airlifts iPhones worth a record $2 billion from India. Why would they do this crazy, expensive shipping method? To avoid tariffs. There's a shocker. So, we've talked about, obviously tariffs, but this is, and they can create a lot of work, as well as uncertainty in the supply chain. Because why would I want to ship and pay a tariff today when if I wait a week and I don't pay any tariffs, why would I do that? So this is an example of where Apple incurred a bunch of expense, which, as Apple shareholders, which many of us are, our company incurred this expense, as well as, they incurred the expense to avoid an expense. So plus it's actually pretty cool when you think logistically. So, what is that? 600 tons of iPhones. Now, I've never thought about ways to measure amount of iPhones. It seems like 1,000 of them, and when you get the little white box, it's not that heavy. 600 tons. That's how
Woo.
much they shipped. And what surprised me, and they did this to avoid the tariffs, so they had to ship it out to avoid it, because things that were already in progress of being shipped, I guess, avoid tariffs on this thing. And some things that hit me in this article. One is they shipped iPhone 13, 14, 16, and 16e models. I thought Apple was just make 16s, but I guess they still make the old 14s and 13s out there. So they're shipping those all to the United States. Let's see what else. 63% higher shipping than the previous month. So this is an example where tariffs, instead of waiting for the tariff to go away, this accelerated the business. So just a lot of coordination here. They also lobbied the Indian airport. So normally to clear customs, it takes 30 hours. That sounds like a long time. They got them to get it down to 6 hours. So, and there was 6 cargo jets were used in this operation. So, I don't know, Corey, what do you think about that? And that sounds kind of crazy, huh?
These companies they adapt. They
Yep.
adapt, and that's all Apple was trying to do, right? It's
Yeah.
uncertain, but the only certainty they had was if they got it off the ground by a certain date, they had that in the bag, and they're trying to protect what they can. So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that these companies are put in these situations, frankly.
Yeah, and that's what it is. $2 billion worth of iPhones. So, Apple is a smart company I'm sure there's an actuary somewhere on a spreadsheet here that says, okay, $2 billion. If we pay 26% tariffs on 2 billion, that is $500 million. Yeah, that's about right. But if we ship them, it's going to cost us $30 million. So therefore, it will save money to do this crazy shipping. Somebody makes that decision. They say, yep, that's definitely worth doing. And they move forward. So that's what these companies will do, is they'll adjust. It just seems crazy to me. Now, if they take it to the next step and they do air drops, I will be really impressed. Corey, what do you think about that? They'll just fly the cargo plane over, drop out these pallets full of iPhones with parachutes. I don't know. I'm just kidding. They're not going to do that. But
That's a whole different supply chain. I would love to see that. Just airdrop. Boom. That's funny.
So, anyways, example of tariffs in action. So that one's kind of a negative article, and that a waste of money to do this. But so I saw this today, and of course it's April 15th, and so you may be reading this. It came out at 1 o'clock, so like an hour ago. ChatGPT for taxes. I bet you there's a lot of searches today on ChatGPT for taxes. I bet you there, people are out there. If I do this on the 1099, and I did not try ChatGPT for taxes, but hey, I would try it. But when I read this and I see H&R Block, who is the largest tax preparer that I know of, and I know there's Jackson Hewitt, there's some other ones out there as well, and also individual businesses. This is an example where I could see AI eliminating, reducing, what I'm going to call frictional costs. The government wants you to pay taxes. We want to pay the appropriate taxes, and anything that you pay to have it prepared or mailed, that's a frictional cost. It's a cost in between the real entities. And I certainly don't fault H&R Block as well as my tax pro that I work with, because they do help with advice. But ChatGPT could get into this game and start to help this. So when I read this article here too, H&R files more than 20 million tax returns per year. 60,000 tax professionals. Now, what they're doing tomorrow, they're probably they're probably catching up a few, but they might be on vacation, because I guarantee the last couple months has been quite a bit. So, I just see that ChatGPT or any other AI program, if set up correctly for taxes, could really help. You might even try putting in ChatGPT something like, hey, what are some ways that I can reduce my taxes legally? You always want to do it legally, but this is the kind of frictional cost where AI can save dollars, I believe. Now, we don't own H&R Block in our book or our models, but certainly, and I didn't pull up the stock to see. Let's just pull it up. We'll just pull it up on the fly. I don't even know what the ticker is. H&R Block. Let's see. You know what it would be? HR Block, baby.
HRB? Is it HRB?
Is it HRB? Yeah, there you go. Let's look what their stock's done in the last couple of years. I've always wondered, do they surge up in April stock-wise? Let's look at a 1-year chart. Well, there's definitely a surge up in April. Let's see. Let's look at last April. Here, we'll go a 5-year back. Now, I don't know that I would count on it surging up every April, but and certainly H&R Block has done pretty well as far as stock. It's an $8 billion company, so it's really pretty small actually. Anyways, this is the kind of company that could be impacted. Look at that, Corey. Maybe we should add that. Maybe we should add that to our model. I would never think that it would be up that much, because other than taxes tend to get more and more complicated. So, anyways,
Mike, I do have a hot take on the AI for taxes, AI for all that stuff. It's that, so, if you kind of rewind, if we go back in time, we had the internet bubble pop in 2000, but we didn't get internet in our pockets until about 2008. So that was where social media, et cetera, all took off. My hot take on the AI side of things, which AI is incredible. Of course, if you're not using it, you should be. But I think when did we get it? 2022?
Yep.
I think by 2030, that's when our phones are going to be highly powerful and effective AI agents that can help us file our taxes on our own or whatever using maybe HR block. I don't know. But I just think that's my prediction for when the AI agents really change your life, where you just
Mhm.
say, hey, grab me a flight here. Hey, order me this, send it to my house at 5:30, blah, blah, blah. I think that's my prediction. Obviously, AI is already very powerful, but the tools, the use cases for everyday hassle,
Mhm.
that hasn't rolled out yet. But anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll
Do you
see.
have a thought? What do you think about the AI agents? I mean, you think it's
I think.
inevitable?
Oh, I believe the AI is so powerful already. I use it all the time. Very helpful to me. Even when I say write a letter, and it's no big deal to run it through the AI and say, hey, make this sound a little better. Check my English, and it does very well with all of that. Um, you know, I, it's. I also think AI is going to be a little bit like Microsoft Excel, where we only use 5% of Microsoft Excel, and there's so much more capability out there. So I think AI is going to be that kind of tool where like we're
I
only
think they
just.
have AI in Microsoft Excel now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like any of these technology tools. When I see them, I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really cool. But we only use like 5% of the actual capability of it. The AI will be the same way. We'll use it for creating pictures for podcasts and things like that, where there's so much more capacity to do it. I always just wonder too when it like generates a picture for me or something, like what computer out there in the world is this chunking along at, somewhere, at a data center. I always just wonder if we're going to end up blowing out the AI, like we're going to, take on all of the capacity.
You can ask the AI where they are. I was obviously talking to an AI and I said, "Hey, where are you located?" And it'll tell you. It can tell you which data center it's in.
Very cool. There you go. I just learned something right there. More things to find out. Well, here, I'll stop sharing my screen and tell us what Jamie Dimon, who will probably be using AI all the way into his retirement someday.
No kidding. Uh, okay. So I just wanted to hit on one kind of main thing from the JP Morgan conference call. Of course, JP Morgan released earnings last week. Many of the big banks have already released earnings. They are kind of the starting point of the earnings season. Um, so I just wanted to highlight a little something in this paragraph one and then something in paragraph two. This was during the question and answer. Oh, and JP Morgan had good earnings, obviously big, solid bank. That's kind of the boring part. But what people are most interested in is what are these very powerful, influential CEOs saying and thinking about these, the implications of tariffs as we go into Q2, Q3, and throughout the year. He said his Michael Feroli, so his I think chief economist, says they're looking at a 50-50 recession chance. So he's adopting that framework of thought as well, 50-50 chance of recession. He said, of course, if there is a recession, there's those predictable things like credit loss and other factors. He said he doesn't normally pay much attention to anecdotes, but this time he is. And he thinks you're going to see a lot of companies, like as in he's talking to the analysts will see a lot of companies reduce their earnings estimates. The analysts will reduce earnings estimates for the S&P. He said right now, so he said earnings estimates were that earnings would grow 10% for the S&P this year. He says now it's at 5%, and that his guess is it'll be 0 to negative 5% by this time next month. He said, then here's what, this is what I thought was the most interesting quote. You're going to hear 1,000 companies report, and they're going to tell you what their guidance is. Jamie Dimon's guess is that many of these companies will just remove guidance. So this is going to be negative for our ability to forecast and to establish certainty and predictability for this year. So he thinks that's going to go away, all that guidance. He said they're going to tell you what they think it might do to their customers, their base, their earnings, their cost, and their tariffs. It's different for every company, but I assume you see that. He said then, and anecdotally, a lot of people are not doing things because of this. They're going into wait and see mode. So mergers and acquisitions are gone. People's hiring plans and stuff like that. People have to adjust to this new environment, and I think you will see what it is. So there you go. I guess I'll stop there, Mike. But is that what you've been hearing? Is that
I mean, there's always
guidance is gonna.
Yeah. So, to me, it's being used as a universal excuse not to turn in my report card. It's kind of like CEOs, if they put out the guidance, we're going to hit $2 earnings per share, and they come in at 190, everyone's disappointed. If they come at 210, and they're like celebrated. But by pulling that report card or that guide off, then they can come in and say, well, that's kind of what we expected. And it's all the fault of the tariffs. Tariffs are going to be the universal excuse. I certainly do understand there is an impact from tariffs. I'm not saying there's not, but still, if everybody pulls their guidance and it's just Wall Street gaming the system. I'd say put your best guess out there and at least share where you're forecasting. I get it. I get it. And a lot of times you'll see companies do what they'll throw in the bathroom sink. So when they're going to miss their earnings, they'll just be like, oh, it's so bad. It's so terrible. Tariffs, whatever the situation is, it won't just be tariffs. It could be anything. It's so bad. So that when they come out with the news 3 months, 6 months, a year later, it always sounds good. It's like, wow, they said it was going to be really bad, and it wasn't that bad. It's like Corey's kid coming in and saying, Dad, man, I'm doing terrible in this class. I'm getting an F all the way. I'm getting an F. And he comes in with a C-, and Corey's like,
They kitchen sinked me. They kitchen sinked me.
You did it. You got a C-. Thank you, young Corey Jr. Anyways, we'll see what happens.
But, all right, that's all I've got.
Thanks, everybody. Market's been kind of choppy today. Nothing exciting to report on. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.